Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to get into the topic of navigating dating apps. At least from the perspective of a guy. A friend of mine had asked the question because he was just curious on how in this kind of new age of navigating that because he was new to that. And so we're going to break down a couple of tips. And I may end up doing a follow-up video to this. I'm not sure because I didn't have time to really brainstorm as much as I would have wanted to. So it's kind of coming off the dome. But essentially, obviously this is kind of the new form of how people kind of reach out to each other or whatnot. As we've gone over in the past, a few past videos about how the how should I say the way people operate in this day and age when it comes to social contact, seeing people out about, you know, walking on the street and whatever the case is, it has evolved. It has evolved to a place where the only people who approach others on the streets are people who, for the most part, don't care what the results are. The type who might, shoot their shot at anybody. You might get one of those kind of, yo, what's up? Kind of cat calls or whatever you want to call it. Other than that, as far as men go, talking to women, you really don't have regular average guys talking to women much anymore because they already know the result is always tends to be the same. And it got saturated with those same results, negative results, to the point where a lot of men now just don't bother except a certain type of man. Usually the type who, like I said, they might be the player type. They might be the type who just they don't care what they yell at because they don't care what the results are. If that person responds favorably, cool. If they don't, they really just don't care. So most, I don't even want to say that this is the norm, but it kind of is the norm now of people meeting has gone the way of dating apps. But the thing about it is that dating apps are not what they used to be when you had, so, excuse me, sorry, hiccup, social media in the way of, um, large platforms that were not specific to dating per se, but just socializing. So we used to have the MySpace, you used to have the chat rooms back in the days, you used to have all these kind of things. They were almost a loose avenue of, you could use it for dating, but you could also just use it for hobbies. MySpace had pages for music, people who are up and coming, or just sharing your interest or things that you liked, your hobbies. Same thing with chat rooms back in the days. You had chat rooms that are based on a hobby that you were into. So if somehow that became something in the realm of dating, it wasn't exclusively just that. So there was this level of, um, it wasn't based on hooking up. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. It wasn't based on hooking up. It was based on just kind of you being in the space similar to you walking down the street, and you happen to be at a place that you like going. Maybe you like going to the museum, you like going to the zoo, you have a hobby that you get in. Maybe it's a music place, a dance place. You happen to see someone there. It tried to simulate that feeling to a degree. I don't know if they were intentionally trying to do that, but essentially it simulated that kind of vibe of that I'm here because of an interest. And hey, if we kind of vibe, we have that. Fast forward, now you have dating apps, which are more specific. And it's kind of like, hey, this is more akin to like going to a club. It's like, we are here to meet up and possibly to hook up. So, one, it has a very strong connection to the concept of hooking up. Two, it has a very fast and careless aspect about it, like similar to you being in a bar or a club where you kind of just pass somebody by and it's like, hey, what are you doing? We both know we're here to kind of socialize so I can get straight to the point and I can kind of get straight to kind of what I'm looking for. And that other person gets straight to what they're looking for. So the microcosm of the nightlife scene is, and this is essentially what it is, because truth is most people knew that in the nightlife scene. It was never really about a healthy relationship or something like that. It was always essentially an exchange. It was, for the ladies, can I get you to buy me a drink? For the men, it's like, can I get, some pleasure? So you always had that dynamic, and that's essentially what the dating apps now bring in the digital space, like a bar or a club, as opposed to when you had dating you had these social media platforms, which I guess eventually evolved to kind of like what Facebook is. But the difference is that Facebook is very much like friends and family, posting things. It's not as general purpose to be used as like dating as well as the way you had things like MySpace, chat rooms, and things of that such. So as far as the tips go, and like I said, this is for a perspective of men because when it comes to women, for the most part, they're gonna get a lot of people contact them. That's really how it goes. Women get contacted by men, men do all the contacting. And I know there are some apps. There's that app Bumble that tries to change that dynamic. I don't really know how that stuff works, but I'm from my understanding, it doesn't work because relying on the women to reach out first is something that I don't think a lot of women do unless they're there as predators for the men, because most conventional women are not going to want to reach out to them at first, or unless it's like that 20% of men that they find super attractive. In that case, the average man is not being hit up. So we're not even going to count that. Anyway, so for the perspective of men reaching out and contacting women, um, first off, this is from the perspective of your average man. So I know somebody who was not familiar with dating apps and they had no problem getting women when they were out on the street. They're like one of the 20 percenters in terms of guys. And, they were informed about getting on an app just to see what it's like. Not that they already had like a shortage as it was, but it was just the conveniency of not having to be, walk on the street anymore and this and that. Because a lot of times when you get older too, you don't have time for that because you are running and gunning, working, trying to do, you got so many other responsibilities. So this person jumped on there and sure enough was bombarded by women by so much they can't even keep up with it. And so this is not for guys like you. This is not for guys like that. I mean, guys who, they really can literally say, I want to do crazy things and say all the wrong things. They're a walking red flag and the women throw themselves at them. This is not for those kind of guys. It's for the average guy who has trouble navigating things. First off, I'm going to start with saying this. If you're trying to make any kind of real connection on there, if you see, and this will apply to anybody's and like any kind of app or whatever the case is. If you see someone hasn't thrown up, they just got photos, do not match with them or like them or whatever the process is in the app. Uh, we're just going to call it matching with them for the sake of just the middle ground of all apps, whatever they call it. Don't match with them. Don't try to match with anyone who just has photos. Don't try to match with someone who has very little words. If someone says princess treatment, do not try to match with them. It's an exchange type of dynamic, and you should not be this. Once again, I got to preface to say that I'm referring to anyone who's trying to look for something that can amount to something serious. If you're just looking for fun and games, then obviously that is a whole different ballpark. If you're looking for something that could possibly amount to something serious, but it doesn't have to. I mean, obviously you're gonna feel it out. You're gonna go on a date. You're gonna see what it's like. But that's the direction that you're leaning in. Make sure that they have don't just say things like princess treatment. I like money. Blah blah. Whatever the case, things of that sort, because that says it's a transactional exchange. And right off the bat, the moment you know it's transactional, it means that unless you are planning on treating them that way, and even then, it's not guaranteed you're going to get something that you want out of it because essentially they do that to many people, and sometimes, often too, you might have scammers. There are scammers on some of these apps, and sometimes they just want you to kind of click and match, and then afterwards they're either asking for money or sometimes they just want to get your information. You don't realize that they're able to put that together by asking you some questions, like, like they what's, obviously they'll say, actually, what's your name, maybe what's your last name. If you got kids, they may say, oh, what's your kid's name, blah blah, just start a conversation. Obviously, if you exchange phone numbers, be aware too that people can look you up just off your phone number. um, there are a lot of things, so be wary of that. Just know that when you're looking for someone, you're looking at someone who is just has photos, or is transactional. um, Things like princess treatment, blah blah, this and that, transactional. Just know that that's a no-no. Secondly, I always say this: you got to have an evaluation of what your social market value is, aka your looks. Your social market value can be more than that, but on a dating app, it's just your looks, because that's all that they know. And don't just throw up all this stuff like, oh, well, I got money, I got this and that. That's just put you out there as bait. And anyone who reacts to you in that regards is just looking to use you. Obviously, if you have a well-rounded profile, then they'll read that and they'll understand, okay, like things you're into, hobbies, blah blah, this and that, and they'll get to know the other aspects about you. But just don't post yourself up like, I've got money, and think that that means you can get with someone who is more attractive than you by like a whatever kind of measure, because at that point, essentially, it goes right back to the exchange, the transactional aspect of it, and that's what you're trying to avoid, a transactional interaction. So that is another thing to be mindful of: your level of looks versus the type of level of looks that you're trying to match with. Now, understand this too. This is just the unfortunate aspect of things. I say that I've said this before in a past video, and I'll say it again. Women are supposed to look pretty. They're supposed to be pretty creatures. That's how it works. Men are attracted to women because women are supposed to be pretty creatures. Men are not supposed to be pretty. Men are supposed to be providers. They're supposed to be like in nature. It's about them being protectors and providers first when it comes to men. It's not about them being pretty. It's about them being strong. It's about them being strong minded. In our case, as humans and in a civilized society, strength comes in the form of uh, you know, your ability to provide, your ability to protect, but not just physically, more so than that, even though it's always good to be in shape and all that other good stuff too, but more so in that, where you're at in society. Your ability to protect also stems to that level of, okay, do I have enough resources that we're living in a nice neighborhood versus I don't, and now now have to defend physically, be a protector physically, because I'm in a neighborhood where that's the kind of thing that goes down. So that concept of, as civilized human beings, um, you know, a man is supposed to protect, but in a different way than what we think of protecting. Even though, like I said, it could be a physical aspect too. But you get the point. Provider. He's supposed to be smart, intelligent. Means that he goes into the category of longevity, and legacy and things like that, making him a good father, a good husband. These are things that are supposed to attract women, and men are supposed to be attracted off of the women are supposed to be beautiful. They're supposed to be attractive. I say this because that's not where we're at anymore. It's not enough that the average woman is attractive and the average man is hardworking and they link together and they both appreciate each other. Now women want men to be pretty. And when I use that term, it doesn't necessarily mean like feminine. I'm using it like over exaggerating. But I mean, even when a guy is like, he has to have this super clean cut, he's got to look super physically, on point, super muscular, this and that, and people are doing it for the looks. It's the same as saying he's got to look pretty. The attraction uh, should not be the larger concern in terms of the looks for the men, as it should be traditionally, that they're hardworking and they bring to the table. But that's not where we're at anymore. Also, understand that when it comes to women, not all of them are just pretty. Is no longer just that general standard anymore. Now it's like you have women who will say, "I am I'm good or I'm perfect just the way I am, regardless if the man's not attracted to them or not." So once you start understanding these dynamics, you understand as the man now, you're gonna have to, if you're looking through dating apps for someone serious, and all the women who look like, I'm gonna use this term, not that I'm like very familiar with Instagram, but as they use that term, Instagram models, I guess that, for the most part, it just means like somewhat skinny looking chicks with nice shapes and that kind of typical uh model magazine kind of look or whatever the case is, for lack of a better word. Um, that image, if you're that kind of person who you see something like that and someone's up has their pictures up like that, you have to understand in this day and age, people like that get so much attention that if you're an average guy, you trying to come at that is very few and slim in between. Excuse me. Sorry, hiccups. Now, if you want to come at that, that's fine. But understand that um, you know, there's certain aspects to come at that from. If now going back to that other person's profile, if they have a lot on their on their page or their profile, they have a lot of things going on, like their hobbies, what they're into, whatever the case is, and they're very attractive. You can piggyback on that. But once again, if it's just pretty photos with nothing said, or the only thing they say is I like princess treatment, blah blah, this and that, like I like money, blah blah, it's transactional. Another thing to look at too, that's a huge red flag. If a woman says I like traveling. I like going out to eat. I like shopping. Completely stay away from them. What they're saying is, I am looking for someone to pay for either my trips or to be able to match my level of going on trips all the time, um, to go shopping all the time, either pay for it or at least match my energy as far as shopping all the time. And going out to eat, either you're paying for it or match my energy as far as we're going to go out to eat all the time. Now, paying for it is the obvious. Matching the energy means that woman is not saving for herself probably. And so, but if you match the energy, you're now not saving for yourself. And now both of you are just spending money living that life, which is not sustainable for the average person. We're talking about average people right here. We're not talking about rich people. We're not talking about the 20% guys who are like super attractive and they get whatever they want. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about the rich guys because this doesn't even apply to them. They're just going to go out and do whatever they want. So we're not talking about that. So someone who has a limited amount of finances, generally speaking, are gonna, not gonna be able to match that energy if a woman has the energy or be the one paying for them. So anyone who says that their interests or hobbies are traveling, going out to eat, and shopping is immediate no. You do not contact them, period. You do not send messages to people like that, period. So we already got out the way what's transactional. This, as far as hobbies and they listing that on their page, you stay away from that completely as well. Now, putting that aside, if the person is very attractive, but they have a very detailed amount of things on their page that you could piggyback off of because maybe you have a similar interest, they're into photography, they're into collecting of something that you happen to be into collecting, they have pets and you got pets, or whatever the case is, you then can piggyback off that. And that would be your shot for someone really attractive that you're really attracted to. Otherwise, if it's a person who doesn't have that, I would say, like I said, be mindful of what your social market value is and message people who you feel you would will like you more than you would like them. And I know sometimes we say to ourselves, I don't want it to be that way. But at the same time, you're trying to find the middle ground where you're attracted to them enough. But at the same time, they're not super attractive. They're maybe just average or below average to the point where they're going to actually respond to you, because you have to understand on a dating app, they're being hit up by hundreds of thousands of guys. So at that point, the only way you're going to necessarily stand out is if versus the people who are actually hitting them up, you look relatively attractive to that person. Most guys' initial reaction when it comes to dating apps is they look at a girl who just has photos up and nothing else. And if she's attractive, they hit her up. And so most guys' attention is going that way. So I'm going to do a number scale just to make it easier. So if a female is a, like, we'll say eight, 5 is average. 5 means they look good, but they're average. Just an average, good looking girl. If a female is like a 7 or 8, most men are going to hit up the 7 or 8, and she's not even going to put any content in her page because she doesn't have to. Most of the guys are going after that. So most of the girls who are probably below average, we'll say a 4, which I want you to understand, a 4 means they still can look attractive. They're okay. They're a little below average, but they're still okay looking. It doesn't mean they're bad. 5 is your average looking girl, but we have to understand what average is. Nowadays, the average girl thinks she's a model, and most men think the average girl is a model simply because supply and demand. Look back at videos of Kevin Samuels speak the same thing, and he'll tell you this is person's average. And you might look at them and go, "Oh, they're hot." No, it's average. Um, what quantifies average? How many people look that same level of good? The app gives you a good quantifier of this. If you flip through 10 different people's page back to back, and 5 of them all equally look as good as each other, then that's average. So anyway, um back to my point is that, so most of the guys are going to be going after the people who are way above average or even average. If you go after someone who's a little bit less than average, but they have some, one, even if they don't have a lot on their page, you still have a better chance of going for that than you would somebody who's a little above average. But in addition to that, if they have some content to their page and you piggyback on that content, you have a higher chance of having them respond to you. Like I said before, if they have things like hobbies, this and that, and don't just like their picture and don't say anything. If you want to try to get a response back, comment on some of the things they say or their hobbies or their interest, or just, if you're going to comment on a photo, you comment on something in the photo that's not them. There's a dog in the background, talk about that. The environment that they're at, talk about that. If it's maybe like in the middle of like a woods or something like that, like, oh, you like the outdoors, talk about that. Don't just simply go like their photo, or simply, hey, your photo looks nice, or you look hot. Don't ever compliment somebody because they get hundreds of thousands of that. It doesn't mean anything. Um, and as far as, I'm gonna actually do a separate video because this is getting long. I'm gonna do a separate video in terms of responses, and that will be how to navigate dating apps or two. But as far as just getting in there and getting, some kind of response, that's what you're looking to do. So let's recap. Anyone who just has photos, that's a no-no. Anyone who's looking, who says princess treatment, money, I like to be wine and dine, all that, that's called transactional. No, you don't want to try to match with anyone who says that. Somebody whose hobbies or interests are travel, going out to eat, shopping, is also a no. That means they have no content to them other than spending money. And they are going to want you to spend money with them or spend money on them. Once again, leading to a transactional type of situation. Even if that's not how it initially starts, it will lead to that. Or at the least, it will be a draining lifestyle for you to maintain with them, even if they are chipping in to pay. Um, so all three of those situations right there is a no-no. Fourth, I'm not gonna try to number them, but if the person is extremely attractive, obviously sometimes these are even fake pages in themselves. Don't kind of go after that and think that that's whatever. You're on a dating app where there's hundreds of thousands of men hitting up maybe 1,000 women. The amount is so crazy one-sided that you going after the top person and hiding behind the internet in the aspect of just saying, hey, you look hot, blah blah, this and that, as if you wouldn't say that if you were walking down the street and you saw the person. You have to say something more to them rather than just think you could just do that. Don't do that online either, because it doesn't make it any better. It doesn't increase your chances. You might think I'm shooting my shot, but no, like they literally will not even look at it because there's hundreds of thousands of men doing the same thing. So if the person looks very attractive, understand that unless there's something on their page that you can comment about other than their looks, some kind of hobby or this and that, don't even try. Now, someone who is a little more average to maybe below average, do the same thing. Comment on something on their page that you like, a hobby or this and that, but your chances are increased by the fact that they're not overly wildly attractive. Because let's just face it, in this day and age, there's a huge correlation between people who look attractive, and this applies to men as well, people who look attractive and them also being mean people or being the type who are going to demand more of you. Whereas if a person is a little less attractive, it's just the reality of it. They will often be a lot kinder, nicer, a lot more down to earth. And so that's just the fact of the matter. So you going after somebody who's way up there versus someone who's a little less will increase your odds to go after someone who's a little less attractive. And obviously, you're going to look at the pictures. You're going to know what the ones that make you go, oh my God, that person looks super hot versus not. And obviously, the people who are super attractive are going to probably have less content on their page anyway, because they don't need it to actually get people to talk to them. They don't care if you even like them for any kind of content anyway, most of the time. They do have extra content on our page. Like I said, take advantage of it if you can, but say something that's going to actually bring that to light. And even after, if they do match with you, this is going to really kind of dive into the part two, but even if they do match with you, make sure that you are able to hold your own with good conversation and don't make yourself seem like you're fiending too much, and making it like you're at the end of every word they say, whatever the case is. But we're going to end this video now, and we're going to do a part two answering kind of just what happens after they match with you and how you go about handling that. As always, you guys like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Next video being the part two to this video. All right, you guys.